Welcome to DreamMachine. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
And we've actually got a bit of a surprise for you. So, just to let you guys know, DreamWorks Dragons, we are going to finish it at some point. Do please bear with us because we've decided to take a bit of a detour because we were actually going through Netflix and we actually discovered that. So, we actually haven't had a chance to actually check out She-Ra and the Princesses of Power 2018. And so, just to go to the beginning, me and Patricia, we're probably more familiar with the 1980s version of She-Ra,
yes.
which obviously is the She-Ra Princess of Power. That's actually the thing about this. The old version is called She-Ra Princess of Power. This is She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. So that's the difference between the two.
Yes.
If, besides the animation style and basically, virtually everything else. But, so we obviously grew up with that. And effectively, for me, it was just a female version of He-Man.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
That's literally what it was. It was just a female version of He-Man. He-Man was a huge hit in the 80s, and a lot of girls were getting into He-Man, and so they thought to themselves, let's have a female version so that we can be able to sell the toys alongside with He-Man, and that's where She-Ra came to be. And so we had the infamous 5-part pilot that was put together as a movie called The Secret of the Sword, He-Man and She-Ra. And, every single time that we mention She-Ra, I always bring up the theme song of that movie. And, that was the introduction of She-Ra, and then eventually she got her own series around the 80s. And, after that, the character didn't really go too much anywhere else, because even after all of the other incarnations of He-Man, She-Ra was never brought up again. The closest that was going to feature She-Ra in a He-Man reboot was in the 2002 version from Cartoon Network, in which they were going to include She-Ra, but then the show quickly got canceled and they never brought her up. And so, we wouldn't see She-Ra again until 2018, where we have the Netflix series.
Yeah, and just also just right before we get into that, is that also we are aware there is the He-Man She-Ra Christmas special, that, or the holiday special as they like to call it.
Yes.
And that is every time me and Patricia are in a very giggly mood, where when we get onto YouTube we put that on. So
we actually did that last year while we were putting up our Christmas tree.
Actually, we did it the year before that as well. If you remember when I'm trying to remember, was that when we had the first Christmas tree?
Yes, we
was
did.
it? Oh yeah, because I'm pretty sure didn't we have another Christmas as well when we
Yeah,
did
we
that?
did. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We did that for 2 years, where the first year when I came to visit Aaron in the UK for Christmas, this was before I moved in, we actually got a real Christmas tree from a local farm, and then we were setting up the tree, and then we decided, you know what, I'm just gonna pop in some regular random Christmas specials, and then one of them on YouTube that popped up was He-Man and She-Ra, and we were like, yeah, let's just pop it in because
it's just been posted to YouTube as well, so it was like, oh wow, yeah, we got to check this out.
So and then there was last year where we were doing the same thing, where we were putting up our Christmas tree and we were watching Christmas specials, and then we were thinking, we remember when we saw the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas special, let's watch that again because of
reasons. So that's basically our recollection of She-Ra. Effectively, it was just female He-Man for us.
Yeah.
And when we first heard, keep this in mind, a couple of years before we were going to get introduced to She-Ra on Netflix, there was a bunch of He-Man reboots that they tried to do. There was also a bunch of Thundercat reboots as well that they tried to do, and there was just a lot of the 80s super uber action shows that were there in the 1980s got sort of their own variations of reboots. And obviously Transformers obviously works. Transformers have been around for a while since Beast Wars when that first came out, and then it also
there was Beast Wars.
TMNT also got rebooted as well.
Yep,
and there was just this appetite for 80s shows to then be, because they were so silly and hilarious back then, to be rebooted back between the 2000s and 2010s.
Yes.
And when we heard that word that She-Ra was going to be next, we were just kind of all the other ones are just so mediocre, and they didn't really live up to the original things that we grew up with. And that's just being just nostalgic 30 to 40 year olds think at this point. And so obviously there was a bit of skepticism about whether we were actually going to enjoy this or not. So time flew by, and now here we are in 2025. We saw it on Netflix and we thought, you know what, after all the years that we were going to hopefully find a chance to check this out. We got a couple of quiet nights. Let's just sit down and watch it. And Wow, we are absolutely blown away by this show. And
Well, I mean, I knew of the pedigree of this show because I've heard it so many times over the years where a lot of people were praising it just as much as they were praising Avatar: The Last Airbender and Steven Universe, in which it had like a lot of complex storylines and characters. I just never personally had the time to watch it because I was just so preoccupied with a whole bunch of other things that I never like sat down and had to take a look into it. And yeah, I mean, I had that same amount of skepticism at first too because it's like She-Ra, they're gonna reboot this, and it's like this was around the time of the 2010s in which they were rebooting a lot of the 80s shows. I mean, you were saying before about like TMNT, the 2012 version aired on Nickelodeon, and then Transformers had another series of shows after the Michael Bay movies came out, and My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, which pretty much just took over the entire world at that point. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other like reboots that were happening in the Hub, which is now like Warner Brothers Discovery, like that channel that, now is focusing a lot of more educational shows. But yeah, for the time, it was like the place to go to see a lot of rebooted shows for nostalgic kids in the 80s who grew up with it. I mean, there was like a Pound Puppies reboot, there was a Strawberry Shortcake reboot, there was obviously My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and then Cartoon Network did Thundercats, and yeah, I mean, like there was a lot of like of these reboots of the 80s cartoons. Disney even did the DuckTales reboot as well, and that was also a major success. So when I first heard about She-Ra, it's like, well, I mean, She-Ra was a spinoff of He-Man. It's like, I didn't expect it to go like anywhere further than that, but wow, when I first like heard about all the stuff, it's like, oh, the show is so good. It's like, I mean, maybe I'll take a look into it when I have the time. Now I finally got the time with Aaron to watch it, and man, I was so blown away. It's like, man, I really missed out. I should have watched it sooner.
I know, but I mean, here's the thing about this, if anyone here is familiar with old school, also me and Patricia, we're still playing catch up with, a lot of things that people have recommended to us, and, it's only ever when we ever get a chance to find the time. We got Zootopia coming up, in November soon, and I'm really surprised we managed to get a chance to actually, catch up with that. So, when you guys recommend us stuff, it's not the fact that we're ignoring it, it's just the fact that, there's already, another pile of, DVDs kind of, were somewhere where, or there's, a bunch of, bookmarks in, all our streaming sites to, watch all this stuff. So eventually we will get to it, but, better late than never.
That's true.
And also, just to let you guys know, I've recently just found out that, so you don't actually need a Netflix account in order to check out She-Ra and the Princesses of Power if you want. Apparently, it did move over to pop over in 2023, and apparently it's also on CBBC as well. So if you got the iPlayer here in the UK, then you can check out She-Ra and the Princesses of Power.
And you absolutely should. And for those who are wondering, do I need to be familiar with the original She-Ra in order for me to watch it? Do I even need to watch He-Man in order for me to watch this reboot? No, you absolutely do not. Just go straight into this, and you'll have an awesome time.
By the way, but in this podcast, we are going to be going into spoilers of the show. So if you have not watched She-Ra and the Princesses of Power yet, give this a pause, go watch the 5 seasons, and then come back to us.
Yes.
And then, obviously, we'll discuss.
Yeah, and also, if you want us to cover the original She-Ra, then please let us know in the comments below. Many, many years ago, back around, the early years of old schooling, Kevin and I did a podcast on He-Man. So if you want to know about my thoughts on He-Man, then you can go check out that old podcast, which is kind of hard to recommend because it's one of the earlier episodes of Casual Chats. This was back around 2012. So it's a little bit more grainy and a little bit fuzzier compared to the modern podcast that we have now, where we actually have actual microphones and, a much better round of equipment for us to cover the stuff. But yeah, if you want us to cover the original She-Ra, the Secret of the Sword and the original She-Ra series, then let us know in the comments below.
Yeah. So we go into She-Ra. So funny enough, with the way that they've done Adora in this variation of the show. By the way, they have changed a lot this show compared to what we had with the original product of She-Ra. So Adora now is a Horde soldier.
Well, she was a Horde soldier in the original.
Well, when we start off with the show, she is a Horde soldier.
Yes.
And she wants to make her way up to captain. And then also, there's interesting about this is that Catra was actually one of her comrades in the Horde army.
Yeah, that's
And,
true.
yeah.
Which in the original she wasn't. She was just alongside with Hordak.
She was a villain. Like that was just it.
Yeah,
Like,
she was just the villain. That was it.
yeah, and so she's there with Scorpia. She's there with a few other side characters that were in the She-Ra show, and so she's in a way she starts off as a villain in this, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And then Adora and Catra decide to hijack a ship and make their way over to the Whispering Woods, and so they get there, and that's where Adora finds the sword. And but the great thing about it is that the sword's backstory is it's a lot more darker, and it's a lot far different from the original idea of the sword.
Yeah, whereas in the original, Adora had the dream where she was called by a mysterious voice, where she was told about the fact that Hordak had kidnapped her, and she was brought over and into his kingdom, so that she can be trained to destroy Eternia. And in reality, she's actually the twin sister of Prince Adam, who is the rightful heir of Eternia. So she had no idea about her lineage until she was brought in to fulfill her destiny as She-Ra. And they have a similar story to that, but it goes above and beyond into a completely darker direction, where you think that it's going to play off very similar to the original, in which she's going to fulfill her destiny of being She-Ra, and she's going to save Etheria from Hordak. And it does at first, but when you go even further into the story, it goes way darker.
It is. And so by the way, there is no mention of He-Man and no mention of Prince Adam, or no mention of the
Eternia.
other
There's no Eternia, there's no Skeletor, none of the other characters that you're familiar with, they're not there.
Exactly, yeah. The only references they actually make in the show is probably to the original She-Ra show itself.
Yeah, and the reason why was because the creator of the show, N.D. Stevenson, wanted to have She-Ra as a standalone series that had nothing to do with He-Man, and for the most part, they knocked it out of the park.
Exactly. So the idea of Etheria, this planet is just it is a it's kind of a mix of technology and magic. So the idea is that Etheria is building up this massive magical energy that's inside the middle of the planet, and eventually it's going to blow up, kind of the way that Halo rings blow up, if you're familiar with the Halo series. And so that's what later on in the show Adora / She-Ra discovers, and then obviously there is a lot of things that happen before we get to that, which we will get into.
Yeah.
And but I think the idea of this world is so fantastic. There's not oh hey, here's all this pretty little magic and all these sparkles and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, it has some of that, but
sure.
There are some very dark almost post-apocalypse technology that's all involved in this. Whether it's mind control, whether it's stuff that just explodes, things that knock people out, things like that. I think the one thing that they try and portray in this is that, the magic is all nice and good and everything like that, and the technology is, pretty evil and stuff. But then you realize that, She-Ra's sword itself is also kind of technology that, were the first ones, put together. And so it kind of it really puts you in a loop of oh, wow, the thing that She-Ra was fighting with this entire vote was actually kind of the evil technology that they're sort of kind of fighting against.
Yeah.
If you will. So, the one great thing about it is it's so thought-provoking, the way that it puts together. But the great message about it is that, Adora and She-Ra are, not necessarily, one or the other. Adora is She-Ra, and she is, the power source, of the hero, if you will. It's nothing to do with the sword, nothing to do with that. It's her. And that's the message that they get across, throughout the show. And I think it's a fantastic message, I think, to have. The one thing I also love is that there's this thing that was happening in the 2010s is about here's the hero and here's this destiny and they have to go meet the end, and that I think there was a lot of commentary on that. And it's not just She-Ra that does this, admittedly. The Owl House also has this commentary, Gravity Falls also has this commentary, Amphibia also has this commentary. Within the 2010s, I think there was this pushback on the idea is that you have this hero and they have to meet this destiny, but there's never been any discussion about does the hero want want to choose, to meet their destiny, if you will. And I think that was a good, in all the commentaries that I've seen in regards to this, She-Ra actually does this pretty well.
Yeah.
Because you have, not that She-Ra is like just jokingly saying, oh no, I'm not going to follow this along, like, just for like, a gimmick. Like she feels scared and she feels unprepared for the responsibility that she has. And she's, second guessing herself over this. And I think the way that they did this whole story arc with Adora being She-Ra and having this pressure placed upon her when she didn't originally want it in the first place. She just wanted to have like what she thought was pretty much a normal life, and then she finds out that she's not from this dimension. She's actually human. She's came through a portal, and she doesn't know anything about her backstory, and she has this kind of like existential crisis because of that, and all the people around her can't really understand that because they've not been in her shoes, whether everyone kind of like puts it on like she needs to be the hero all the time and things like that. It's funny because you might think this is a really weird thing to kind of like talk about this. Think about Shark Tale for a second.
Okay.
Like, imagine if they actually wrote Oscar as like, oh hey, this thing happened where I happened to have like been involved in a situation where a shark got killed, but then everyone then decided that I am then the shark slayer and I am then the hero and I'm thrust into this situation, and but then he like feels like he's obliged to continue this lie, and not because he wants to. The problem is in the movie that obviously he wants to because he's a selfish prick. But I mean, like, imagine it for a moment that they wrote Oscar the same way they wrote Adora. Don't you think the story would have been a hell of a lot better if they did?
Sure.
Forget the fact that they're still like human fish. I mean, everything like that. But I think that if they did that with Shark Tale, if they did the same thing what they did with She-Ra, I guarantee you that movie would probably be like maybe 20-25% better than it actually is.
Yeah, if we're going to go into a DreamWorks example, I guess we'll have to bring up Moses from the Prince of Egypt. We're talking about a Hebrew baby who was brought into this world, and the Pharaoh says, kill all the Hebrew boys because they're overrunning the Egyptians. And so you have him being raised by the Egyptians, thinking that, he's going to be the Prince of Egypt, he's going to be living this luxurious life. And then he realizes at a later age that, oh, wow, I'm not an Egyptian prince, I'm a Hebrew slave. And so, he runs off, and then he starts to face his destiny of setting the Hebrew slaves free and having to confront his past of being an Egyptian prince. So, yeah, that also has a lot of complexities in that aspect where, he's seen both sides. He's seen the perspective of living a privileged life as an Egyptian prince and having to seen the struggles and the abuse of a Hebrew slave and what they had to go through for 400 years.
Yeah, I think, I think your example's probably better than after saying that. I think the Prince of Egypt, I think, obviously did that story, in the biblical sense, and now here we have She-Ra, like in the... I guess you could say in the Netflix sense, I guess you could say.
Sure.
So I think in regards to the way DreamWorks, I think went about this, I think in regards to our protagonist, I think this is someone who's very fresh, very unique. I think obviously has her own complexities to her, has her own fears, has her own ambitions about things. Then realizes that her ambitions are elsewhere, and I think the way that we go in the direction, also the way that she interacts with our characters as well. I mean, we have a look at some of like her inner circle, like you say, the best friend squad, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Glimmer is probably one of the most interesting characters in this in She-Ra, because she starts off as a teenager, effectively wants to go out and like have fight in the world, and wants to escape the castle, and wants to have all these adventures and stuff like that. But then when, through the series, when her mother, sacrifices herself to regain the sword for She-Ra, Glimmer then she doesn't become Princess Glimmer anymore. She becomes Queen Glimmer.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, she's thrust into this position where she feels like she has all these pressures that are put on herself, and she has to make all these decisions. And the decisions that she has to make necessarily might not be very popular with everybody that she has to do. But the problem is that she likes to, be friends with everybody, and she's a very bubbly personality and has a very infectious personality as Princess Glimmer. But as Queen Glimmer, good grief. Like, you sometimes, there's one scene where she says, okay, I know, you guys are going to do this, but as the queen, I order you that you're not going to do this. And then she kind of like, who's the bad guy here? because there's certain scenes where she will go against what the protagonist should do, and it's out of the fact that she doesn't want to be either her mother or even her father in that sense. She wants to be her own queen. And so she's doing it to sort of prove a point to everybody that she's her own self. And not the fact that, it's the right thing to do. And that's probably down to her immaturity, it's probably down to her lack of experience. And, to have this responsibility thrust upon her in, the most tragic and I guess you could say the most sudden of circumstances. I think Glimmer also has a very interesting character arc, going throughout this show, and she's definitely it's definitely a trip to go through, just going through herself, regardless of all the other characters we're about to talk about.
Yeah, like in the beginning of the series, we see that Glimmer is this protective child of Queen Angela, because King Micah was, killed off, apparently, from, attacked by the Horde. And so she wants to keep Glimmer safe because, she's going to be the future queen. And so, she prevents her from, doing dangerous missions, even though that you have Glimmer who wants to gather all the princesses together so that they can be able to take down the Horde. And, you have Prince Angela saying, we tried that many years ago and it didn't work out. And right now it's too dangerous. But, the Horde is inching closer and closer into conquering all of Etheria. And, Glimmer says, well, we need to do something. We can't just sit around and do nothing because, the Horde is taking over. And eventually, we're going to have nothing left. And she wants to be able to prove her mother wrong, saying, I can take all these dangerous missions. I want to gather the princesses so we can work together in the rebellion. And we see throughout the beginning of the series that, she's very immature, she's very naive, and she doesn't have a lot of control of her powers, which she is able to teleport, she's able to shoot out sparkles, and so she has a limited amount of power because every time that she runs out of it, she has to go back over to Bright Moon, which is the name of the kingdom, and recharge herself so that she can be able to get back into fighting shape. And she's very very optimistic, and she's very caring, and she's very considerate, and she's best friends with Bow, who is an archer and who's a strategist. And then she starts becoming a lot closer friends with Adora when she starts learning more about her.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Bow, and he's sort of kind of like our soccer, I guess you could say, of the show. And but mind you, I think the one thing about it is that I think Bow, the way they make his character more complex is that he feels that he has to, he has to show himself off a lot more about what he can do, and he has to be more ambitious. And it's not because of any back trauma or anything like that, or like he's under any pressure or anything like that. It's the fact that he has to keep all of this a secret from his family. The fact that in one episode, they actually explore this, where, he throws his bows, his arrows, and everything to one side, and he just gets dressed up in normal clothes. And actually, it was kind of funny when we watched that episode, because I nearly blurted out. I was like, wait a second, is Bow actually, are they going to actually say, Bow's, goes through a portal, goes to, Earth or something like that? He's actually human? He's not actually, a part of Etheria or something like that. He's leaving, this double life. And then it just turns out, oh, no, he's just he just tells his dad that he's a college student, and that he's away at the boarding school or something like that, and and he's not actually part of the rebellion or anything along those lines. And I'm really glad that they had an episode where they could resolve that, because once they've resolved that, Bow then becomes a more confident character, and he obviously has his silly moments, of course he does, but because he is sort of comedic relief in some aspects, but they really do, when he needs to take control, he takes control, and when he needs to alert everyone to the fact that something is going on, he has that ability to do that later on in the seasons. So I think the way that they also did Bow as well, I think the great thing about it is we've spoken about Shiro and Adora, we've spoken about Glimmer, we've spoken about Bow, this is they have this team aspect, but at the same time they always keep the individuality of the characters as well. They keep them integral to, and they have it so they can bounce off of one another, because there's too many times where we've kind of seen like characters where it's kind of, oh well, that's the angry one, that's the cute one, and that's the the leader, if you will. And but their character traits don't go any further than that. The great thing about this trio that would take us from the one end of the show to the other is that. They give them their own stories. They give them their own character arcs. They give them their own story. They're giving them their own, emotions and their own challenges that they go through. And there's times where, their friends may not necessarily be able to help them with that. It's something that it's a personal journey they have to go through. And because the one thing that's easy that they could have done is that it's, where one person have a problem, like the whole group comes together and they all save the day. And it's too easy to do that. But in some instances, Adora will say, no, I need to do this on my own because there's certain things I need to work out. But then we'll take advice from her friends before she does it. And so they have this this fluidity with the situations that they find themselves in. And I think, after speaking about Bow and Glimmer and Adora, I can tell that, the strength that this show has is in its characters. You could have a really weak story, and believe me, there was, one or two, weaker episodes, but the one thing you and I could walk away from, despite, they're saying, oh, that episode wasn't so good, it's like, well, hey, at least the characters were fun to interact with.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
And I also love the fact that Bo can be pushed beyond his boundaries of not always being the strategist and not always being the voice of reason. And not always being the optimistic one and the one who holds everybody together, especially in the last season, in which when we got to see the ramifications of Glimmer when she's able to get the heart of Etheria activated. And that was when they were transported over to the other dimension where Horde Prime was able to locate them. He blamed Glimmer for all of that, and he wasn't forgiving with her at first. He basically was very distant with her, and he was not speaking to her, and he was very angry. I mean, he even admitted that he was angry with her. And then, Glimmer had to apologize and saying, like, I know all of this is my fault and everything is falling apart, but, I just want to let you know that I'm fully sorry, and I hope that we can be able to, right this wrong. And yes, we have, Bo forgiving her, but he doesn't, straight up forgive her right away. I mean, he's still a little bit angry with her, and then eventually, he starts, forgiving her bit by bit. And then in the last episode of the series, that was when Glimmer confesses her love to Bo, saying, I love you. And, then after everything that they've been throughout this entire series, then, Bo starts letting his guard down and confesses that he loves her too. And another thing that I also really enjoy is the fact that, all the arguments and all the disagreements and all that kind of stuff, and Bo has to be the one to kind of set everybody straight, saying hey, let's just calm down. There are some moments in which he can't do that anymore because he feels overwhelmed with it. And that's a great character trait.
Yeah, and let's move on to, I guess you could say, our very late love interest, I guess you could say, and that is Catra. And the fun, when I first, was going through She-Ra, the one thing I saw is, there was this massive amount of shipping going on between Adora and Catra, and, I was like, I couldn't really make sense of it to begin with, because, are they just, having some fun with this? It's like, no, they're building up towards this kind of very awkward, relationship that they both have. And Catra is she's a character who's very insecure about herself and very insecure about the people around her, and the only person that she feels like she can trust is Adora. And even then, that's tested to to the max, because there's one scene where Catra will just scratches her across the face, and it's when she's a child, it's like, oh wow, if that happened to me, I would never go back to her ever again. But Adora, feeling sorry for her and understanding her situation, goes back to her, and Catra is responsive to that. The one thing I was a bit obviously not too knowledgeable about is the fact that, I'm guessing both of these characters were brought up by Shadow Weaver,
yes,
at a very young age. And I'm guessing, because Shadow Weaver was quite abusive, I guess, towards, Catra. I guess that's the reason why she acted in the way that she did.
Yeah, she did. Because Shadow Weaver always praised Adora for being such a good soldier and for being smart and for being fast learning. And Catra fell short of all of her expectations. And so that's why Catra Catra had all of those insecurities because she wants to be the best. She wants to be able to be the captain alongside with Hordak and trying to take over Etheria because of all the things that they were taught by Shadow Weaver, saying like princesses are bad and we need to be able to bring peace into Etheria, and they're the ones who are causing all the trouble, not realizing that no, it's them who are doing all of that. And so you have Catra, who feels that she's not able to live up to Shadow Weaver's expectations, and if she doesn't live up to those expectations, most likely Hordak would not be able to see the potential that Catra has. And so having the fact that Catra is her only friend is Adora, and the fact that they're able to grow up together, and even when Adora meets up with all the other characters like, you know, Bonnie and Kyle and all the other members of the Horde, Catra gets jealous, and that's why she lashes out on her and scratches her face, saying like, no, you're only my friend, don't be friends with anybody else. And yeah, she has not only insecure reasons on why she feels that way, but she also has a lot of attachment issues as well. The moment that Adora leaves the Horde and goes to become She-Ra and fulfills her destiny, Catra feels like she left her. She didn't say, "Oh, you left the Horde," even though that she does, she claims that that's the case. But no, she's saying, "No, you left me, and now I have to be the one to bring you back." And Adora says, no, I can't go back because I've seen what the Horde is. And Catra's so upset about it. And so she's willing to become the Force Captain. And she's willing to be alongside with Hordak's, plans of taking over all of Etheria.
Well, at one point, she actually was like running the Horde herself because, behind the scenes because she realized how weak Hordak actually was.
Yeah. It's an interesting twist where Hordak is actually a clone of Horde Prime. And Catra realizes this, and she takes full advantage of it.
Yeah. The one thing about Catra is that she brings out the worst in every single character. Like,
she is a great manipulator.
Yeah, she is.
She is alongside with Azula as like a fantastic manipulator and a really complex villain.
It makes you wonder, because we've had Bo, who's kind of like our Sokka, we've had Catra, who's kind of like our Azula, and this show looks like it takes quite a lot of inspiration from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
It makes a lot of sense considering that at that time, Legend of Korra was already out and it was wrapping up its season, and yeah, you can definitely feel like the Avatar influences. I mean, it pretty much was like a new standard of like how to tell interesting, complex stories with great characters in a big world, and a lot of series was starting to do that. They were starting to expand the characters and expand the world that they were in. Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and Legend of Korra, and various other shows. I mean, like, it wrote the book on how to present, a way of revitalizing these characters and revitalizing the world that they're living in and telling really dark, complex stories that they couldn't get away with decades ago. And so, yeah, I mean, when you see all of that influence put into it, you can understand why.
Yeah. So, Catra, I think, obviously, then she builds up to being, Adora's love interest, and then eventually they do get together at the end of the show, and I'm just amazed about how, they've managed to get this love story from, Adora and Catra, like, fighting each other and, like, wanting to actually kill each other. And then eventually we get to the end of it. It's like Catra admits to Adora that she finally... It's funny because Catra has had this whole thing, like, locked up inside her for such a long time, and she doesn't know how to express it because, in a way, she's kind of like Helga Pataki in a way from Hey Arnold, if you think about it, because, she has no way to really, out with everyone to really properly, express her emotions in that way because she just doesn't know how to do it, and her, reaction is to attack people because that's, the way that she manipulate people, like he's saying before, because that's how she's basically been brought up to believe that's how you make your way in the world. And so, it's learnt behavior. And, but then eventually, when it's brought up to the point where, Adora is going to put her life on the line in order to save everybody, Catra says, no, I don't want you to go because I love you. And that is such a powerful moment. And I've seen reaction videos, recently on YouTube, like, saying how people react to that. And it's like, wow, like, you've taken 5 seasons and you built it up so well. And then you got to this point, like, bam. Like, they definitely knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they definitely did.
In that, like, it's just, because, given the fact that I kind of, like, was sort of spoiled on that already, like, it didn't really probably impact me as much as it did, probably everybody else, but because they probably watched it in 2018, but obviously we're seeing it here in 2025, so I've seen a lot, but I think I can see how powerful that moment actually was.
Yeah.
And they built up, this, from the point where Adora and Catra were friends at one point, then all of a sudden they became enemies, and then they sort of became friends again, and Catra was starting to kind of find herself, a bit more new haircut, new attitude towards people, and then obviously she got to the point where she felt like she could then express herself, and that's where we are. And yeah. So that was...
the one thing that shocked me about Catra was her voice actress. She's voiced by AJ from Ally and AJ, as in like the pop singers. I'm like, what?
I mean, she's got some good talent.
I gotta say, I was shocked by this because I just knew them as like those girls who just sung all the pop songs around the Disney Channel.
Justin Timberlake sold me as an actor when I saw him in The Social Network. So I mean, and then unfortunately, then he kind of lost it when we saw Trolls. But I mean, I can understand why he was there, but good grief.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen. To be fair, I haven't seen like the other movies that she was in. I've never seen Secretariat. I haven't seen The Lovely Bones or Super 8. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about the Goldbergs, but I haven't seen that show. But just having her voice as this villain, even though that she sung a lot of like pop songs along with her sister, I was like completely shocked that she was able to pull this off so well.
I'm quite surprised given the fact that Scorpia, who's played by Laura Nash, she got a song number, and as far as I'm aware, Catra didn't.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about.
You'd think you'd give Catra a song number, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's just unbelievable. I mean, I would think that Catra would have had a song number, but no, she never does. And I mean,
to be fair though, this isn't. This isn't Steven Universe, is it?
No, it's not Steven. No, it's not Steven Universe. No, but and the whole song number was just kind of like a facade anyway, because you have that scene in which when Scorpia is inside of a grotto where it's kind of like a secret club filled with thieves and scoundrels, and there's just a stage over there, and she has to be able to keep up the disguise that she's at. So she had to sing a song where she literally sings about like, I'm a spy and we're spying on you, and everybody thought it's a song number and they all applaud for it. That was actually genius.
It's I think it was really good, and because I mean there has been song numbers where like the heroes accidentally reveal themselves as being people, and just after you even brought up with those types of things, you think that's where it was going to go, but no.
No, it's not a Baloo Jungle Book situation where he's disguised as the orangutan, and then no, it's Baloo the bear, and we have to chase after him. No.
Yeah, it's like those are the types of things we were brought up on. So we thought, we know where this is going. It's like, but it's a round of applause. Like, all right then.
Okay,
I mean, in a way, I'm glad it kind of turned out that way, because Scorpia found her confidence.
Let's talk about the princesses.
Scorpia. Now, so the backstory of Scorpia is that the Horde came into her clan. They basically just took over everything, and then they just basically said, because she's quite high up within her clan, she can basically have like a high ranking of place within the Horde. So that's the reason why she's already a force captain, in regards to that. So, I mean, the one thing is that she's very accepting of just things. That's just the way how things go. She's she is confident, and but the problem is that her confidence is is more like she can do something, but she doesn't realize what she's being manipulated to do. And so, I mean, when she finds out that the Horde have basically trampled all over her, her species effectively, that's enough to send her off, to go find her real friend, which by the way we will talk about later on after this. And she it's funny because, she gives nice hugs. She is such a really lovely person. And, this Horde people just take the absolute piss out of her. And, I just feel so bad for her. The fact that, she can't seem to... It's only until, she cooks up a scheme to say that, oh, hey, I've got this thing, but, I ripped out of Emily to, give you, further information about, the first ones. And Catra, she says, oh, that's what you do. You're just a screw up and everything like that, and just starts ripping into her. And that's when finally Scorpia realizes, oh wow, Catra's a really bad friend.
Yeah.
She thinks everybody's a friend, and that's the thing.
And Catra treats her the absolute worst.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, like, oh man, it is so terrible. Like, you have Scorpia, who's like, really sweet towards Catra and wanting to be her friend and wanting to, help her out when Catra is going through a lot of stress of trying to, conquer this town and, take down She-Ra. And you have her like losing sleep for days and having all that stress that she's building up. And so you have Scorpia who comes on by saying like, yo, you need a hug, or here's a cup of tea, or, here, why don't you talk to me about it? We're friends after all. And no, Catra just like basically says, go over there, do this thing, do that thing. Oh, you're a screw up. And all you do is mess things up. I don't want to be around you anymore. You're always in the way. And yeah, like, there's a point in the series in which she just couldn't take it anymore, and so she ups and leaves.
Yeah, I liked it when she finally went to the princesses and I can't remember the name of the Froster. Yeah,
oh, Froster.
I remember when Froster he made like some like ice pincers, and it was like, oh, have you just offended her? It's like, it was hilarious, like watching Scorpia finally say, oh hey, I'm gonna make my way with the princesses, and I'm gonna see everybody and try figure out how to do this. And when she finally hooks up with the Black Garnet and she's able to finally find her true power and everything like that, you can see that she's a completely different person.
Yeah,
after that she's finally come out of a shell.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
It's lovely to see. So Scorpia herself has a great story arc of being someone who is effectively had to take orders the entire time, feel being kicked around, and even though she has such a sweet soul, and then finally she drives up the confidence to basically escape it all.
Yeah, and the fact that she's a princess and she never really took in the princess, ranking because, her title was stripped away at a much earlier age because that was when Hordak took over the kingdom and made it into the main base. And so you had, her crystal just sitting there all this time, and Shadow Weaver took advantage of it, gaining her powers. And, she never really decided to, become a princess. She just said, oh, I'm just part of Hordak because that's just the way it is. And, my grandfather felt that, Hordak was going to be the one to help us out. And maybe it didn't work out, but, I'm still here and I'm going to listen to what Hordak says. And so later on in the series, when she decides to accept her princess lineage, that was when she becomes super powerful, and that's when she becomes a lot more confident with herself, and that's when she becomes a major part in the plans of the rebellion when they're taking down Hordak and his army. And that's really great to see the growth that Scorpia goes through.
Yeah. So let's go to and we kind of skipped over a couple of characters, but I really want to talk about Entraptor.
Oh,
because
yes.
Entraptor is
her character arc is completely different from the original. Where in the original She-Ra series, she was always working alongside with Hordak because she was making his weaponry and his technology. They decided to make her a princess in this incarnation, and oh man, she is just so out there.
Yeah, she is. Her whole thing is tech, and so she just goes all above and beyond because she's so obsessed with science, and I think this was a representation of autism in a way.
It was intentional.
It was intentional, yeah. Because and on top of that, because she just doesn't understand people, and the one thing that the thing sad that thing about it is that she's really obsessed with tech because she realizes it makes people happy, and so that's sort of kind of like a thing that she does to get the attention of people, and but obviously sometimes it is wanted attention, then other times it's unwanted attention because she just goes so far that she ends up irritating the people around her, and they ask her to stop, and she just doesn't. And so she has no self-control in regards to that. And so she, it's funny because, in She-Ra, in the original She-Ra, obviously she was one of the villains, but
yeah, she was.
In this, she's not. If anything, she's she's the chaotic neutral, if you will, that, has become a character in a sense. So, because at one point she was actually siding with, the other princesses to obviously take down, the Horde, but then she ends up siding with the Horde because they're willing to provide her with the things that she needs in order to complete her research.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is that what she doesn't realize, she doesn't think that she's doing anything evil. She doesn't think she's doing anything good. Her whole endeavor is to come up with these scientific breakthroughs so that she can get a better understanding of the world around her, and will obviously be maybe give her an understanding of herself. in a way. So, Entrapta in herself could be a podcast of her own, really. Like, I don't think, the couple of minutes we're going to dedicate to it, I think we'll do it justice.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a character who starts off as this princess who's just a little bit awkward towards everybody else because she's just obsessed with science, she's obsessed with tech, and, she even lives in a palace where it's a maze. Like, she doesn't even know where she's at most of the time because she's always in her little office. And when people walk around it, it's like, wait, that hallway looks familiar. Oh, that's because I literally just walked through it. And she likes little tiny food. She doesn't like big food.
But what's funny is that she's a princess but doesn't have like a runestone.
No, she doesn't.
Or anything like which is kind of interesting because why does she not have one if that's the case?
I guess maybe she just focuses on her tech, then that she doesn't really need a runestone.
Yeah, like it's just if the thing is that she doesn't have one. Like there is no one for her to go to. So it makes you wonder, like what was the purpose of drill? Like because it seems to be the idea is that these areas amongst Etheria are like you have. Where the Horde of where Scorpia was obviously settled, then you have Bright Moon, and then you have like the Whispering Woods, and they have like all these areas that like have all their like own like rune stones and ruins and things like that. It makes me wonder like what was the purpose of drill? Like was that just where they were the first ones happened to like keep all their technological stuff?
That's probably what it was.
Maybe, I don't know, but I mean maybe someone who like is a massive She-Ra fan probably could fill us out on that.
Yeah, maybe.
But like But it makes Entrapta unique, I guess, in that case. Like she doesn't need a runestone. She basically made all this. She basically became a princess all on her own.
Yeah,
effectively.
She makes all of that tech. She makes the robots, and she's able to learn about the first one's powers. And she was able to discover a whole bunch of things. And yeah, I mean then they realize, oh wow, she could be really helpful for the rebellion. And yeah, she does become so in the first couple of seasons. And then when you have all the princesses going over to the Fright Zone, and then when they try to escape after finally rescuing Glimmer after she was kidnapped, then you have thinking that Entrapta's dead because they couldn't find her, but in reality she was like hiding, and so there were like she was waiting for them to come back so that she could be rescued, but they never do. And once again, Catra, being the great manipulator, saying, oh, they just left you behind because they don't care about you. And then they realize, oh, we could be able to use Entrapta to our advantage because she's so good at tech, and she does a really great thing for Hordak and a lot of the other people over at the Horde.
Well, that's what she tried to do, but I think it kind of flew a bit over her head, really. Like, Catra's manipulation. If anything, like the one thing that hooked her on was the fact that, oh, hey, we've got all this tech that you can help you out.
Yeah, and also
with. Yeah.
you know about this first one's power, and that's what She-Ra does. It's like, oh, we can easily take down She-Ra now, especially when she finds out about that. One of the tech devices that Entrapta was experimenting on was causing her robots to go amok, and the way that the first one's power was affecting She-Ra when she first tried to destroy it was that it just messed her up and it got her to go all loopy. And so Catra decides, yeah, I'm gonna take advantage of that. I'm gonna take down She-Ra with that kind of power. And there's also the upgrades of the robots where every time that you try to break it, it comes back together, or putting together a new armor for Hordak where he's able to become stronger than before. So I mean, she just sees it as, oh, I have a lot of places to do my tech, and oh, Hordak seems to really respect me. He's my friend, when in reality, he's just using her.
So Entrapta is a really fun character to go along. I think she, if anything, she lights up the show quite a lot, literally. But anyway, speaking of lighting up the show, I mean, like maybe we'll have a quick talk about Seahawk, maybe.
Oh yes.
And he is just when you first meet him, like he is just. It's funny because he's like Gaston in a way. He
reminds me of Varric from Legend of Korra.
Yeah, he does, and he is just like he will say all sorts of stories about himself, but basically none of them are actually true.
Yeah.
He's funny enough, he's like his own variation of manipulation in a way. Like he'll tell all sorts of stories to get in people's good graces, then realize that people realize like he's a massive fraud, and then after that, they'll hate him all. He's created loads of enemies. All the times
because he's burned down their ships.
Burned down their ships and done all that stuff. It's just crazy. And the fact that Mr. is just he's just constantly like he's like watching Screech kind of like go up to Lisa, like Saved by the Bell, constantly trying to like get into the good graces of her, and obviously he keeps failing every single time.
Yeah, or in Harold's case, Curly going up to Rhonda.
Oh yeah, there's that too. And but mind you, I think it's just watching this one-sided relationship in Seahawk's mind, like he thinks that he's with Mermista. It's like, oh, it's just great. It's just hilarious the way that he just
and Mermista is so deadpan.
Oh yeah, Mermista is the deadpan character in this, and she's like, oh yeah, well he's gonna do that. She's obviously like mirror out of like K-pop Demon Hunters, and so she's like the deadpan
or like Daria from Daria.
It's she actually gives the show a bit more of a balancing, because you got like all these wonderful delightful characters, and or you've got like they're either over the top delight or they're over the top evil, or they are, some of them are just like neutral in the middle, and then you got Mermista who's on the other side of that, and like she adds a perfect balance to all of this, because if there's any like a sarcastic comment you ever need for like whatever's going on, Mermista's there to actually fill it in, which is great.
And there's also a lot of great balances with the other princesses, where you have Mermista, who's kind of like the deadpan. Perfuma is like the very happy and very smiley princess who grows plants and flowers.
She's the hippie, effectively. Yeah. She's the hippie, she's the hippie character, and she, it's like everything is peaceful, everything can be flowers, everything can be trees, not everything needs to be a conflict. But finally enough, she went in the desert when she was pushed because she can't manipulate any of the cactuses in the cacti, I guess you could say, in the desert. She sort of loses it a little bit, really, and so when pushed to her edge, she could obviously change character a little bit. But her neutral drive effectively is everyone can be peaceful, everyone can be friends, everything can be flowers.
Yeah, and she was able to learn that lesson when she was getting closer to Scorpia, where she was able to see, oh well, you're just the Horde, and that's all you're gonna be, just this evil person. But then when she gets to know her more and becomes friends with her, it's like, no, you're kind of like the cacti, and you seem like you're prickly at first, but then you're actually beautiful and you have flowers. So yeah, that's also a great character as well. And Frosta is also a delight too.
Yeah, Frosta, I think her flaw, I think, is that she is in charge of the Kingdom of Snow. But the problem is that I think she takes her position as neutral. I think far too literally. So she doesn't see good or evil. She's just like, okay, everybody is just equal in my eyes.
It's kind of like that character in Futurama, where it's like, I am neither happy nor upset about it. I am just neutral.
Yeah, that YouTube video that was 50%, thumbs up, 50% thumbs down. Why did YouTube ruin that? Anyway, that's sort of like where Frosta is.
And it makes a lot of sense because she's the youngest out of all the princesses.
Yeah.
And everybody treats her like a little kid, but in reality, no, she's actually the princess of an entire kingdom, and she has to be the one responsible for making sure that
that was Seahawk, I think, that was sort of doing that, wasn't it? Really, talking down to her and not really giving her, her chance. Everybody else, to a degree, obviously they realize that she's still a small child, but at least they'll respect her as a princess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, Seahawk is always overreacting towards everybody anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's just default Seahawk, really. Yeah. And as a tribute to Seahawk, after this podcast, we're going to burn down this table. No, we're not.
No.
Okay. Going back into, and also, I do apologize, everybody. My iPad decided to go off. Shadow Weaver is also a very interesting character in this, and so she effectively brought up Adora and Catra, but obviously her obsession was with power and the Black Garnet and trying to get in the good graces of Hordak, and she's actually quite, she had like an Anakin Skywalker moment, I guess you could say, because she originally was Lightbringer.
Yeah, Lightbringer.
And so, but she manipulated, she was concerned about the Horde and wanted to defeating the Horde, and so she wanted to take all the power enough to effectively wipe them off the face of the of Etheria, effectively. But so she asked the council to give her this power, and they refuse. So she manipulates Glimmer's dad, who is a boy at this point, to go through this spell to obviously give her the power that she needs. Obviously, you can imagine it all goes horribly wrong. It disfigures her, and then she becomes Shadow Weaver because of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so effectively she goes from she goes through this changeover from Lightbringer to effectively Shadow Weaver, who's like the Darth Vader of all of this, and she ends up trying to bring up Adora and Catra to effect and all the other recruits to be Horde Prime soldiers. And it's not until she realizes that, Hordak is about to do something so terrible, that she realizes, oh, wow, that's a huge mistake, and, I need to do something about this. And, but funny enough, she has a connection to the Black Garnet, but that is severed, when she obviously gets a mask smashed. And then she ends up being a prisoner of the people of Bright Moon.
Well, yeah, and also for a while, because that she was so focused on getting Adora back, that Hordak decides that she is losing focus on what the main goal is, and so that was when she starts losing her ability to do her magic, especially when her mask gets smashed. And then you have Hordak saying throw her in jail because we have no use for her anymore. And so you have Catra, who is giving her the thrashing and the punishment that she feels that she deserves because of all the things that she was put through as a child. And you have Shadow Weaver basically saying, I did this for your own good. I did this so you can become stronger. I did this so that you can become better than me. And eventually she was able to get just enough of her magic so that she can be able to escape the prison and head over to Bright Moon. And then eventually she was able to even teach Glimmer magic that she was teaching her father, and saying I see your potential.
They built this up so well because they build you to the fact that Shadow Weaver is going to be abusive towards people around her, and then all of a sudden she gets in Glimmer's good graces and she's teaching her magic that she probably shouldn't be learning. And it's amazing that but then you realize that actually Shadow Weaver has actually turned the corner and said that what I'm doing is for the good of Etheria, because she knows that something horrible is about to take place. And it's funny because you realize that it's funny because you feel like she's in you don't know really what to make of her at one point, because all of a sudden she's growing flowers, and then you realize that she's using them for magic, and but then you finally get to the point where she's willing to put her life on the line in order to save Adora and Catra. And I mean, maybe, earlier on I was kind of Shadow Weaver doesn't seem to be as bad as she started off with in the show. And then when you finally get to the point where she sacrifices herself, for Adora and Catra, that actually does hurt quite a bit, because here you have Adora and Catra, who have had no parental figures, and the only person they've really known, which has been their constant in their young lives, is Shadow Weaver, and then they see her just get killed off, in those horrendous of ways. That must be very difficult for them, regardless of how badly she treated them.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, they were able to just realize the finality of Shadow Weaver when she was killed off, and then they realized, oh wow, that's that is really, really scary, of that could be possibly happening to us. And oh wow, our parental figure who we known our entire lives is completely gone, just so that she can be able to give Catra and Adora enough time so that they can be able to fight off against the evil. It's they were able to see the finality of it.
Yeah. So, Light Hope is an interesting character in this, because effectively, she's just the computer, but the problem is that, you'll find out later on that she's actually had previous encounters with all the other She-Ras, and then you find out that she was placed in place of the first ones for She-Ra to do her destiny to activate all the magic that's collected in the middle of the planet, and then fire it off into the universe to effectively wipe out as much much as possible. And then you find out that, she's like just this super weapon. And it's interesting, like, I make so many comparisons to Halo in this, because like here you have Etheria that effectively is like this planet that effectively is just like this super weapon, and that's the first ones manipulated this planet in order to be this thing. And it's quite interesting to go through this again, like saying, oh wow, like here's this computer that is sort of like a guilty spark, and they want the monitor will try and manipulate She-Ra to activate the magic within the planet and effectively destroy all life as we know it. So Light Hope starts off as like just oh hey, I'm just the computer and I'm just here to assist Adora, and I don't know anything else besides certain commands that you give me. But then you realize, oh wait, hang on, she's a lot smarter than she actually led on to be, and it's because of her previous encounters with all the other She-Ras that she realizes that that's what's put her in the situation of having to manipulate Adora to where she needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, you always have that typical trope about like, oh, the superhero always has to have like the computer that they talk to get advice or to learn something. Like you were saying before, like with Halo, where Master Chief is talking to Cortana. Even Superman has it, where it has like old recordings of his dad Jor-El. You have various other. I mean, even with with a Gem and the Holograms, you have, the recordings of this computer who, recollected on all the things that her father was putting in so that, she can eventually become Gem. And so, yeah, you always have like that, computer that you think that, okay, they are going to give you the advice. They're going to give you the powers of all the superhero things that you need to do and fulfilling your destiny and, leading you to the right path. But here's the thing about Light Hope is that, there's some, she's so focused on fulfilling the destiny that it sometimes gets in the way of like, what you're telling her to do is actually really awful, especially with what happened to the last She-Ra, Mara, where, she is trying to erase all the things that, Mara was doing, where she was like treating Light Hope as like an actual being as opposed to just being a computer. And, she's trying to erase all the emotions that she had of Mara because she wants to fulfill the destiny of She-Ra. She-Ra is the destiny that Adora needs to do. You need to be able to open up the heart of Etheria. You need to be able to do this because, you were meant to do this. And yeah, I mean, sometimes destiny can not always be the right thing to do. Sometimes destiny can lead you to a thing that could be very costly to a lot of people. And also, destiny could be something that is forced upon the person, even though that they don't want to do it. Like, you have Adora, who is just so concerned about the fact that she is not from this universe. She is not from this dimension. She was taken in, and she doesn't know who her family is. She doesn't know who her, what her past is before, going over to Etheria. Like, she is forced to being Adora is being forced to be in She-Ra, and she doesn't want to be She-Ra all the time, but, she is told by Light Hope that she has to be because that's her destiny. And that could be kind of pretty bad.
Yeah. So, I think in regards to, a lot of the characters that we've spoken about, by the way, we're going to go into Double Trouble now. Double Trouble is an interesting character because she starts off as, like, as the villain, like, manipulating everybody with being a shapeshifter, and so she can turn into different characters, and so she can pretend to be Glimmer and say something to She-Ra, or she can turn into to Adora and say something to Glimmer and Bow, and or she can, she can do that. Oh, in fact, she even went the one step further and created like a whole new character for them
Flutterina.
to be Flutterina as well. And so there was that, and mind you, like, the one thing I was quite funny about is that I'm really surprised that, in the village that she was in, like, it was only a small village, and, like, there's this Flutterina just kind of just comes in. It's like, I mean, are you saying that, nobody in this village knew who Flutterina was? Like,
I think that the village was probably just so happy and optimistic that they just probably didn't even notice.
Yeah, I guess, but, you would think, like, a little, like, character like that, like, would have got some sort of notice, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like exactly, yeah. But yeah, I mean, Double Trouble, they did a great job of manipulating everybody at a cost, of course, because they're all about the acting. They're all about the performance and bringing out the emotions of everything that they do. And yeah, they transform into Flutterina, and that is how Hordak and the Horde are able to become one step ahead of everything. And they're just concerned about, like, wait a minute, like, how is this possible? And then you have Mermista saying, like, there's a spy amongst all of you, just like in my books that I always read all the time about the tale of this and the tale of that.
Oh, that's hilarious! Like, you know, Miss is like a secret nerd, effectively. Like, I love that reveal. And the one thing that was interesting though is that I really thought that they're gonna do this like, you know, mystery sort of episode, and like I just said this is either gonna go two ways. Either this is gonna be they're gonna find out that Double Trouble is you know, within their midst, or it's gonna be a complete waste of time. And that's what I was kind of worried about, and that's kind of felt like where it was going, you know, towards the end of the episode. But then they said, oh hey, well, you know, we put the spare communicator in like in the dining room, and like so, you know, obviously Flutterina goes over there and has a look for it, and you didn't think that anybody was gonna, like, you know, play into that because they were too busy fighting amongst themselves. But then they're all there in the room, and then they said, oh, Flutterina is the one who's looking for the backup device to smash it, and then Double Trouble gets revealed. And mind you, even then Double Trouble gets revealed, like she's still quite manipulative in the fact that, oh hey, was all that performance like, you know, all real acting, or was it based on like real experiences? And they all kind of just stand there looking at each other thinking, oh wow, like, you know, it's hey, what we were doing was sort of real and fake at the same time.
And what was fantastic about it is that, you know, we have Glimmer, who's trying to do the truth serum on Double Trouble, making them spill the beans about what is happening with Catra and the Horde and Hordak. And every single time that they spoke, they talk about like, oh, you know, your costume just doesn't fit you properly, or it doesn't match your color, or oh, your magic is not very good, and, you know, always just like playing, just basically like, you know, screwing with her. And then eventually they confess everything, and you think that, okay, well, they confessed, and now they're just gonna go off and you know, try to stop them, which, you know, that's what happens. You know, that's when, you know, they decide that they're gonna go over to, you know, Hordak's lair and try to take them down once and for all. But then you have an interesting plot twist. It's like, you know, Double Trouble is all about doing anything that they can to do at a price. And I guess they must have given him a decent price, because then Double Trouble teams up with the Rebellion, saying like, I'm just on the winning side, and I can tell that you lost, when he tells it over to Catra.
Yeah, I love like the dressing down Catra gets, you know, from Double Trouble, because it's like, you know, she says, because she spent enough time with Catra to realize like the type of character that she is, and she just gives her a complete dressing down and just leaves her like, you know, on the floor. And to the point where Catra realizes, oh wow, this is where I'm at. And so, mind you, like, you know, it's very hard for a leopard to change her spots, and so the minute we get introduced to Horde Prime, and we get introduced to all the other, like, you know, bits of the Horde Empire, you know, immediately she tries to, you know, be you know, trying to get into Horde Prime's good graces. And it's like, you know, oh god, here we go.
Well, I mean, that's to be expected for a character like Double Trouble, who is able to become a shapeshifter. Is that?
Oh no, not Double Trouble. It's all about Catra.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Of course.
It's like there's one thing that kind of frustrated me, like, towards the end of season. I think it was the end of season 3. I think it was. We watched this all in one go, effectively. So
Horde Prime came in at season 5.
Season 5, okay then, because it was towards the end of season 4, then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So like, I was a bit annoyed like when we got to that, because it's like, oh wow, like, you know, Catra hasn't. We've gone through 4 seasons of Catra character evolution. It looks like she's not learned anything from the looks of it, and she's just going to try and get into Horde Prime's good graces, I guess. And but surprisingly, when we get to season 5, no, it's like she is realizes that she can't manipulate her way out of this, and so she takes sympathy on Glimmer, because she's got nobody else, and neither is Glimmer. So obviously they've formed somewhat of a friendship in this. So that was good to see. And because the one thing I was a bit worried about, you know, when we got to that point, it's like, oh, well, you know, they're just going to continue on with a 5th season, and Catra's not learned anything. And but no, I think they did very well to get from that aspect of Catra to the end that we saw at the, you know, towards the end of the season 5.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I think that was really well done in regards to the story. I mean, like, it's funny because we're not really concentrating too much on the story much. We're kind of like going through the characters, but I think that's where She-Ra, Princesses of Power, is the strongest. It's in its characters. I'm really glad we've not gone through an episode. It's like, oh wow, this character is a complete waste of time. But so we've gone to an episode where it's like, oh wow, I'm really glad we met this character, and this is another aspect of Etheria that is making the world a lot bigger than it actually is.
Yeah.
There's one thing I like about the world building in Etheria. They've done it so well. Like all the areas in the planet are so different from one another. Whether it's the Fright Zone, whether it's Bright Moon, whether it's Drill, whether it's Whispering Woods, whether it's like Beast Island, quote unquote, which is actually like a first one's technical waste dump, effectively, where all these technologies have been dumped into this place. So what they've done, I think, with the world, I think with the characters, and obviously the story ends up being sort of like a little bit secondary, really, because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like the one thing, dare I say, I think the one thing that might be probably the little bit weakest, I think, in She-Ra and the Princesses of Power is I think some aspects of the story, which is like, because the one thing I think that She-Ra had was effectively like, oh, here's this this goddess who has this magical sword who says by the power of Grayskull. By the way, when we never really introduced the Castle Grayskull in this show, so what's the point of saying by the honor of Grayskull?
Well, I mean, you have to remember that they are trying to keep in the homages and the references to the original.
I know, but like it's but you would have thought they, there's actually no besides Adora saying for the honor of Grayskull. There's actually no other references to Grayskull in this show.
No, there's no like I said before, there's no He-Man or Prince Adam. There's no Skeletor. None of the other characters feature from the series.
You would have thought, like, well, at least in this rendition of She-Ra, you would have said, Adora would have asked, Light Hope, like, oh, hey, what is Grayskull? And it's like, it's the first one's, castle that existed, long ago, and it is the where the first ones, had as like their lair or capital building or whatever, or like where it was the place of significance for the first ones. So that's the reason why you say for the honor of Grayskull. You would have thought they would have explained that, and it's just a couple of sentences of dialogue, and then that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, like you would have thought they would have done that. But
no, they didn't really. I guess again, I understand that N.D. Stevenson wanted to be focusing She-Ra as a standalone series as opposed to like a spin-off of He-Man. So I guess it does make a lot of sense in context.
Yeah. So I mean, in regards to like the She-Ra story, which I take a bit of issue, and I get it's a 5-season marathon that you kind of go through, but it's they start off as She-Ra as a conflicted character, coming from like the Horde, all of a sudden becoming She-Ra, and so there's that story, like Adora going through like the process of like a de-hordification, I guess you could say, of herself, and realizing that princesses aren't so bad, and that's the very beginning of it. And then there's like the pressure of her becoming She-Ra, and then becoming like the solution to defeating the Horde, and being enemies with Catra, and then there's like introducing like Horde Prime into the whole thing, and like the fact that there's like more Horde out there, and like Hordak himself is just like a weaker version of Horde Prime, and it's just a clone of that. And so the story really goes through a trip and goes here, there, and everywhere in that. And so the one thing I noticed is that they try and throw in a few bits of dialogue where it's kind of like if you miss one episode, it's not a big deal, because we will sort of like explain a little bit like at the very beginning of it. It doesn't go like Family Guy. It's like hey Peter, I can't believe that you went jaywalking and now you become the president. Like it's just like it's not like that, but it's like they will give you a couple of bits of dialogue to help you along the way, just in case you have missed an episode, which I think is good in the sense of like of course kids aren't going to be watching TV every single time, and they will miss an episode. But in the era of streaming, I mean, I don't think that's really necessary anymore, because all you can do is just kind of like you just flip back to the episode that you missed. So whether it's relevant now is probably a debate within itself. So
possibly, yeah. Especially since the original She-Ra series from the 80s were all just standalone Monster of the Week episodes, where She-Ra was just taking down all the bad guys from Hordak, and then the day is saved.
I will say there is an addictive thing to She-Ra because they always left things on cliffhangers, and believe me, there's a lot of cliffs to hang off to when you come off an episode. And me and Patricia would be like, going like half midnight or like 1 o'clock in the morning, be going like, well, we're gonna press next episode.
And I'm like, no.
And you're like, no, we need sleep. It's like, all right then.
Yes,
like,
we'll watch it tomorrow.
Yeah. So.
And then you'll be like, no, watch one more episode.
Yeah, the music in this is fantastic, I think, and so I think the intro is also they changed the intros also as well.
They
like,
do,
at the very beginning, yeah.
Which is very akin to anime, in which that every season they always introduce like a new character, or they would change the roster of the characters, and then they would just like put it there so that you can know about what's going to be happening later on.
Well, at one point, I mean, like obviously the sword shatters, and there's sort of like this insinuation from the intro that Adora is not going to be She-Ra anymore. So they replace She-Ra with Adora.
Yeah.
And say it's called She-Ra, and the Princesses of Power, but they replace it with Adora, and make it insinuate saying, oh, you're not going to see She-Ra now. Like that's it. Like she smashed the sword.
Yeah.
But then you realize that but actually, like in a way that was kind of like pretty manipulative to do, because we knew from Madame Raz, during the show that it's not the sword that makes She-Ra, it's Adora that makes She-Ra.
Right.
So it's just her trying to discover herself. Which,
also throughout the end of the intro, they always have like a large group of characters who are going to be very important to the series. And so in the first couple of seasons, you see like all the princesses, and then obviously you see She-Ra, Glimmer and Bow, and then like in the corners you see, okay, we have Entrapta in one of them. Okay, now you're going to see Flutterina in the other seasons. Okay, now you're going to see Catra in the other seasons. So they always change it up where, okay, these are the characters who are going to be relevant in this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also really well done. I also really love the fact that they know about the original She-Ra, because there's one episode in which they are dressed up as the original 80s characters, and the outro song is from the movie Secret of the Sword, and I just thought that is brilliant.
Somewhere out there someone needs me. I don't know how or where, but believe me.
Yeah.
Just seeing like these characters dressed up as the old 80s characters, and then the music from the 80s movie is there. That is a great reference.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, like it being She-Ra, I think eventually somewhere down the line they were going to have to make references to the 80s show. So
that is the only. I mean, besides like obviously like this the characters and some of the story beats. That's the only time I wish they ever brought up the series. Was just that little Easter egg, and I'm sure that people who first watched it thought that, wow, this looks really weird. Why are the characters dressed like this? But no, it's actually a reference to the 80s show. That's great.
Yeah, I love that. So. I think, besides, I mean, that, I think, the one thing I'll say in closing, I think, for She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, I think, this easily could have just been, like a cash grab to, like, get some, people who, like, loved the show in the 80s, get them suckered in, and then, obviously, give them, like, one season or something like that, and then after that, you're said and done. But, no, they put some real heart, put some real thought into this, and by the way, it's very hard to get 5 seasons in a Netflix show, by the way. So I think DreamWorks, I think, did a phenomenal job in what they did there. And also, there's also the it's very inclusive show as well. So there's a lot of people, I think, from all different backgrounds. I think they're going to be able to get themselves into this and feel right at home.
A lot of diversity too.
There was a lot of diversity in the show as well, which I think was very well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, we've come a long way for, like, diverse characters. I mean, if you watch the original 80s series, you can definitely tell it's, like, 99.9% white.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think they've done a very good job of, like, the music, the characters, the designs, I think, are also very good as well.
Which is interesting, because when She-Ra was first shown online, a lot of people were so pissed off of her new design, saying like, oh, it's not as sexy compared to the original She-Ra.
Yeah, because all children's cartoon shows need to be sexy. because it's like I just it's just this obviously was not going to be the She-Ra of the 80s generation. This was going to be the She-Ra of the 2010s, and what do we know 2010 styles to be? It's not eye candy back in the 80s and the 90s. It's all in the story, and it's all about the characters and their emotions and their feelings and things like that. That is just where we are right now, and I think those are important stories to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone just at the very beginning thought, let's just rehash what we're going to do in the 80s. And I'm really glad that they didn't do that, because if they were going to do that, this thing was going to be doomed from the start.
Yeah, I mean, if they were gonna say, oh, we're just gonna take She-Ra and we're gonna just do the very same thing that we did in the 80s series, where she's gonna be like the female He-Man, then
it's just She-Ra but in HD.
Yeah,
it's just what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So they also, I'm just really glad that they gave this a new premise, they gave this a new story, they gave us some different characters out of this. They put in some more conflict, they put in some more strife, they put in some more adventure, they put in a lot of action. There's a lot of action in this show. Yeah, and also the She-Ra transformations sequence in this is in there, and
Super Sailor Moon-esque.
Exactly, yes, and but mind you, they always had the transformations in the original show anyway. So
I know that, but yeah, I mean, whereas for the Honor of Grayskull, where you have all the sparkles, and then you have Adora turning into She-Ra, but it's no, they decided to go full on Sailor Moon on this.
Yeah. So, but again, I can't say within this show, besides the story, I guess I would say, in certain places, I can't say that they've wrong-footed in any of this. I think that what they've done here, in regards to bringing us She-Ra and to bring us a fresh new product, I think they've done this. I would say 95% correct. I think I would say.
I absolutely love it. I love this series so much. I mean, I was quite surprised after we finished watching through all 5 seasons of just how so good it is. And, the fact that it was able to take a series like She-Ra, which was always behind the shadows of He-Man, and just brought it out on its own and was able to stand above and beyond what, She-Ra was able to be. It had never been that relevant at that point in time. And yeah, I mean, it's such a fantastic show, and you can understand why people love it. I mean, the characters are great, and the animation's fantastic, the music's good, the storyline is very complex and just gripping and making you wanting to watch more. I mean, it has a total package, and N.D. Stevenson knocked it out of the park with this series.
Yeah. And it's a trip from episode 1 all the way to the last episode.
Absolutely.
So yeah. I mean, if we had to rate this, I mean, I would say 9.5 out of 10. I think I can definitely say.
Yeah.
It has tiny amounts of problems, but I mean, they're not problems that you can say you can it causes a massive dent to the show. So for me, I think the massive positives in all of this is just everything that I've just stated out before. It's a fantastic DreamWorks series, and in a way, I was kind of sad. Mind you, I always say for a rule for a show, 5 seasons and a movie, and then I think you're said and done. So I'm glad that they probably ended it at season 5, but I've got to be honest with everybody, if somewhere down the line this somehow picks up popularity again and they decide to revisit She-Ra, I mean, I wouldn't be against it, but I mean, it's interesting to see where they went with it if they decided to do that, because they left it on the fact that they said, oh hey, well, if we ever continue this show, we're going to go find magic on other worlds. So I think it was mind you, it sort of kind of feels where that's how they kind of kept Josie and the Pussycats kind of alive. Oh hey, let's stick him on a rocket and blow him into space. It's I mean, it didn't work out for the best. So whether She-Ra, let's put She-Ra and the friends all on a spaceship and launch them into space and let them find magic on other worlds. I mean, with me and Patricia, who's seeing that as a gimmick to kind of keep things alive, for longer than they should be. Let's just go to space, or let's introduce the Great Kazoo into the Flintstones, or let's just go there with that.
Oh God, yeah. She-Ra is going on a grand tour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, but again, you you and I have been through like all sorts of like really bad reboots of shows and have seen but then all of a sudden we've seen other reboots of shows and then all of a sudden they've been great ideas and have been well presented. Like for DuckTales, for example, the series when that first came back. So maybe they could probably do something again if they reintroduce She-Ra and did something more like that. But time will tell if they decide to ever bring this back.
Yeah, and I'm actually curious about the other incarnations of He-Man that have came out on Netflix in recent years. Like,
well, they weren't on Netflix, and they were like other places as well. I think.
I know that one of them was on Netflix.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like Masters of the Universe Revelation. That's the one that Kevin Smith did.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah, so I'm curious about that one too. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I know that there was like another He-Man series that came out literally.
Well, that was the latest one, wasn't it?
That was the latest one.
Yeah, I think I've heard some things about that, but apparently there's been like other attempts to like you and I remember like the really bad 1990s version of He-Man that they did.
Oh no, not the one where they go to space.
The one where he wears pants instead of like where he wears more clothes than he does actually, and he's not as buff as like as he was in the 80s.
Those were dark times.
Yeah, and Skeletor was cross-eyed. Yeah. God.
I think we're done here.
I think we're done here, yeah. So, in conclusion, check out Zero Princess of Power if you have a Netflix account. Definitely do watch it because you'll definitely enjoy it.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so that is it for our discussion of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. I know that you guys have been waiting with bated breath about our continuations of the DreamWorks Dragons series, but don't worry, we'll get to it in due time. But until then, catch you later, everyone.
Bye, everybody.